you don't mind. And welcome, Lisa Law, Icon. Yeah, your interviews with Icon's book was one of the first things that had caught my attention back in was 2021 when you were on Jay Blakesberg's show, Photos with Stories.
All right.
And for about 2 hours. So the way I got to know Lisa, for those of you who are going to be able to watch this, was I ordered those books after watching Jay's interview with Lisa and just being blown away by the history I was learning because I had no idea. I was coming at you really cold, Lisa. And I ordered the books and they arrived on the following Tuesday. And I got an email from you that said your books are on the way. And I wrote right back and said, not only are they on the way, they're already here. I was amazed. And I usually put my phone number in on my signature just sort of randomly. I don't really expect people to call, but you called me that day and we talked for about an hour about your idea for the Museum of the 60s. And I got excited about that. Sent you a little something to sort of help kickstart that. And then it became a thing. It became a pop up museum. Unfortunately, not a permanent one, right? But it was running the summer of 2022, correct? Is that right? I shall speak for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, you want to talk a little bit about the Museum of the 60s and how that got going and where things are now? We're catching up after like 4 years. Over to you.
Well, let's see. Oh, here at the Museo Cultural, they had some space. And I said, why don't we do my show of the Museum of the 60s? And they said, okay, you could do it for free. And
Oh,
I think we did it for 8 months. And uh, Flashing on the 60s, A Trip Back to the Garden was the name of it. And I printed up a whole bunch of my pictures. I got some flags. I got some mannequins for my clothes that I'd made for John Law and for the uh, people from Huautla de Jimenez, their clothes. And I had a lot of posters I used when I put on an event with the bus. We'd march around town in a parade, and I had a lot of posters. I put the posters up, and I had a lot of magazines and copies of the Oracle and Life magazine from Woodstock, and she made what are those things where you put the wood and then the plastic over the top as tables, museum tables.
right.
And we did a huge show, and it was the first time that I'd done it. And it was 8 months we did it for.
Wow.
And there was everybody loved it.
Yes.
But the museum of the history museum came over and said, we want to use some of your work.
Hmm.
And I said, well, tell me what you want. You're here. And they said, well, that one, 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 that one. And they picked 147 items, which then they enlarged or they did other things with. I even had a stove, a wood stove from Truchas. And they did a show, and it was 10 months long. And it had all the communes in New Mexico, including the hog farm and Wavy Gravy and a lot of my images. So that was very popular. Then at that point, I realized I had something really great. And the next time I did it was in 22 when you saw it. And I got a friend, uh, Peter Comas. He owns half the downtown on the plaza. And you would think
Hmm.
he had on the second floor 6 rooms. And I said, God, Peter, why don't you give this to me as a gift? Because it's just sitting there for 6 years. It was there empty.
Wow.
I could have had it for 6 years. Though. Anyway, he said, I'll do that. All you have to do is pay for electricity and keep it clean. So I had 500 pieces. And I just sent you that video.
Right. I'm going to put that up as part of this posting when I put it back on Substack. We were going to do it on Substack Live, but ran into technical difficulties, but that's fine. Flashing on the 60s is a source of a lot of the books, or a lot of the images that you were using in there, I expect, in addition to.
Did you have a copy of the movie too?
I do indeed. And unfortunately, I've
You
got
have
some.
it right there. There you go.
Yep, there's the.
That's my award-winning movie. It was produced by John Paul DeJoria of Paul Mitchell Hair Products
Mhm.
and Patron Tequila, which he sold for $9 million. And he's not as rich as Elon Musk, though. He is,
No.
but not as rich. Anyway, he gave me $300,000 to make that movie after seeing the book.
I didn't have $300,000 to give you, but I did a little bit. And
Yes, you gave me
really,
donation after donation. That was just wonderful
and
because
I
I
couldn't
didn't
get.
have a lot of money back then.
No, I couldn't get there then. But my friend Jack, who lives right down the road from me, actually is bi-coastal now. He splits his time between Oakland and here in DC. He went and you took him personally through there. A guy named Jack Brady. He's kind of short.
I think I remember that.
He was at Woodstock also, as you were, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Has he
And
been
this is what
interviewed?
the result was for me was you sent this picture of Peter, Paul, and Mary from 1964. I believe it says it's August the 1st or August the 4th. I'm not sure of 1964.
What
And
does it say?
looks like it says August. I think it's August 1, um,
There you go.
1964, August 1964. I'm not positive the exact date, but anyhow, you've signed it for us, and my father got it because he actually got a chance to escort Mary to the cabinet maker shop in Colonial Williamsburg, where he worked as a historian for like 54 years. He just passed away last April at the age of
Oh,
91.
sorry about that.
He very much enjoyed having this. And then when I was cleaning out his study, it was one of the things I made sure I secured.
Well,
So that,
Peter Yarrow just died this year.
yes, yes, he was 88, I believe, correct?
And the year before, he sang me happy birthday on
Oh,
a Zoom call, which I
right.
recorded. So
Oh,
I still have it. It's beautiful.
that's lovely. I
Yeah,
looked
I
at
went to the Peter, Paul, and Mary concert with Frank Werber, who was the manager of the Kingston Trio. And he was my boss. I was his personal assistant.
hmm
And he went with me to the Peter, Paul, and Mary concert in Berkeley. And I went backstage
right.
and saw Eddie Sarkeesian, who was the booking agent for both Peter, Paul, and Mary and the Kingston Trio.
hmm
And I was with Frank Werber of the Kingston Trio. And I was talking to him and I looked over and I saw Tom Law.
Right.
And I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Your husband." And I said, "I know. Introduce me."
Isn't that amazing? You have
It's
both present.
love at first sight.
Well, that's great. And you all were married how long?
12 years. And we have 4 children. And now I have 5 grandchildren.
Well, that's fantastic. How old are your grandchildren now? Out of curiosity.
Now is he 24, 18, 16? I don't know. How am I supposed to keep track of all the ages?
I don't know.
But I'm not good at that. Okay.
That's
Then
funny.
10, and then uh, another one is 13. There you go. So I have 5. But Tom has left. He
Yes,
went up to heaven,
right.
but he's been coming down and visiting me, which is really funny.
It is funny, isn't it? I have that same thing happen with some of my friends who have moved to the other side of the veil. My father drops in from time to time. A journeyman I used to work with in Colonial Williamsburg in the foundry, and I connect from time to time. It's always a very, I'm aware that they're gone, but at the same time, it's very present in my dreams state. Do you have these visits in your dream state, or are you talking about them visiting others?
No, he comes by, he comes to me alive. The
Wow,
last time he came was July 4th last year.
fantastic. Tell me about
I
that.
was coming back from the fireworks when
Uh-huh.
my daughter Sunday, and I was listening to some reggae, and I was listening to George Harrison singing my sweet Lord,
Yes.
Hare Krishna. and it was going, and I was feeling really good. And all of a sudden, I felt really good. I'd never felt that good, that happy at
Wow.
one point, at one time. And I was just going, what is this feeling? And I looked over, and Tom was sitting in the chair, in the seat next to me.
Wow. That's amazing. I haven't
Yeah.
quite had that kind of experience yet.
Yeah.
But
He's been really coming to visit.
well, it's very little surprise. Tom and Hugh Romney, later Wavy Gravy, they were the police force at Woodstock, right? As I remember hearing it.
He was, Tom was Wavy's assistant. He was really good at doing what Wavy likes him to do. The two of them were great. He had a megaphone, and he was making announcements all the time, directing traffic. He was teaching yoga off the stage,
Oh, wow.
and he was teaching yoga over with the hog farm. I mean, the two of us were running around like crazy because I was getting ready to feed everybody because
Right.
I realized they didn't have enough food.
Exactly.
And I said, the girls and I had a meeting, the girls from the hog farm, we were invited, 95 of us. And we were sitting around talking about what's going to happen. And they said, well, let's go get some pots and some rice and and cook it up because I think we need to make some more food. And I said, have you seen how many people are out there in that field right now? I said, it's about 30,000 people already. It was over a week before it was supposed to be happening. And
Wow.
I said, I think we got to get some more than just one pot and some rice. So I said, why don't I go over and get some money from the producers? And John Morris gave me 3,000. I went into town with Peter White Rabbit, and we spent that in one day. And then I got another 3,000 in town with John and Joel. And I bought big pots and mixing bowls and cleavers and a green um stone Buddha and some film for my camera and 160,000 paper plates and 30,000 Dixie cups and and what else did I get? Oh yeah, 35 trash cans to mix the muesli. We're making muesli. Wavy Gravy says that I introduced the world to uh,
Granola.
granola, right? And I said, you can't do granola because you have to cook it.
Right.
And we bought honey to cook it, but it takes too long. So we made muesli,
Mhm.
and we had 35 plastic uh, cans. We'd mix it up, and then we'd put it in the pot, and then we'd serve it. And at Friday, the food booths ran out of food, and there was no way for them to get more food because they used it all up, and the traffic was bumper to bumper all the way to the interstate. So uh, we started serving. We were serving all along, little bits.
Mhm.
But when I got on stage, I actually have the recording of that. I said, "Come on over here. Doesn't cost anything. Eat all you want." And Tom got upset. He says, they're all going to come over at the same time. And I said, no, 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 they'll trickle over. So they started trickling over, and there's actually somebody else shot a picture. I was doing aerial shots from the helicopters, but I
Wow.
didn't get that one. But this one guy got that one in black and white, and the crowd, the lines are all the way across to the forest. And we fed 200,000. Michael Lang later took me to lunch in Woodstock, and he said, how do you know how many people you served? You couldn't have served that many. I said, yeah, but I bought 160,000 paper plates
Yep.
and Dixie cups. And I said, by the time I was finished using everybody else's plates too, there was nothing left. There was
That
nothing left.
that'll be a
And
good
so
way
I
of
said,
telling.
we we fed 200,000 people. And now we're doing interviews with the museum at Bethel Woods.
Right.
You been
Right.
there yet?
I have not been up there yet, but maybe I can make that trip at some point. I
I
remember
should
Jack.
fly in and we should go together.
Oh, that'd be lovely. I would really like
Yeah,
that.
so they're doing this thing now where they're interviewing people,
Yeah,
all the people that went. They're trying to find all of them.
right.
And and every few days I find another person and I send their information in. But here we interviewed 40 people, and then I went to California with Neil, and we did a bunch more. And I said, Neil, you got to ask them what they ate. That's one of the most important questions. Not only how they felt about the fact that it was so loving and wonderful, and nobody fought, and nobody stole, and nobody did anything to hurt anybody else, and everybody was helpful. It was fantastic. I said, but you got to ask them what they ate and where they ate it. So what he found out was that over half of the people, maybe three quarters, had eaten at the hog farm.
Oh, wow.
And nobody went hungry unless they were lazy and didn't go over there.
Seen those beautiful pictures of Jahanara and stirring up things. And I understand you went out to the farms, right, and bought whole rows of vegetables
Right.
for.
When we came back, and Peter and I came back, we got a flatbed truck,
Hmm.
and uh, and John gave Peter a couple of $1,000 bills. I didn't know that. I said, "How did I pay for that?" And he says, "I was paying for it." I said, "Okay." So I said, "Give me that row of cabbage, that row of tomatoes, that row of cucumbers, that row of broccoli, that row of cauliflower." I said, and then we put it on the truck in wooden crates and then bring it back to the site where the kitchen was. I had designed a kitchen
Hmm.
and 5 food booths. And while we were in the city buying all this stuff, they were the hog farm was hammering together this kitchen and the 5 food booths. And you could walk on both sides of the food booths. So it was 10 lines of people.
Wow.
And we just kept the kids in the area volunteered. I didn't have to cook. Johanna Ra didn't have to cook, but we were overseeing it. She actually oversaw it more than I did. I left. I went out and started
You had
shooting
the camera,
my
right?
footage. Yeah.
Right.
And I did a video and I did stills.
And you
And I
were
had a
pregnant at that time,
blast.
weren't you?
I was 7 months pregnant with my son Solar, and
Okay.
I was with my daughter Pilar, and Pilar stayed with Tom and the rest of the kids at the hog farm. There was no way I could carry her around. She's in my movie, but there was no way I could carry her and shoot 2 cameras.
Right.
Right.
But she was well cared for during that
Oh
time.
yeah, she had a blast. The
And
kids had a good time. Kids are really great in that kind of a situation. They don't know the vastness of it, right? They
right,
only know what they're doing at that moment.
right, right.
And
But
we had a little pool for them, and we had the stage. There was a guest stage over in our section, and people would come over from the big stage
mhm.
and go to the other stage. Like Joan Baez, I got to shoot 3 minutes of Joan Baez
Hmm.
singing. That's in my video. So I was able to edit that video,
Wow.
and I've licensed it to over 15, maybe 20 movies have used my footage that
Yeah,
I shot and stills.
a good opportunity to read the back of it to the people so they know a little bit more about it. It's talking about flashing on the 60s, and it says it's based on Lisa Law's popular photographic book by the same name, which I also have a nice copy of here, with a nice autograph from you. Thank you. Um, Flashing on the 60s features Peter Coyote, Wavy Gravy, Jahanara Romney, who's Wavy's wife, Graham Nash, Peter Fonda, Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, Carolyn Garcia, Dennis Hopper, Paul Krasner, Allen Ginsberg, Carl Gottlieb, Taj Mahal, David Crosby, Johnny Rivers, T.A. Price, Viola Spolin, I love her segment opening it up, and Michelle Phillips, among others, with interviews of children born during those years who are now perpetuating the 60s values and traditions in their own ways, which is really what I'm trying to do with this little podcast we're putting together. This is a look at the 60s from the inside and people helping with the free kitchens and medical tents at Woodstock, racing across open fields and brightly painted school buses with Ken Kesey and Wavy Gravy cheering at the helms, living on the hog farm commune and dancing to the free concerts in Golden Gate Park, all set to a soundtrack that evokes the spirit of the time with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Richie Havens, Joe Cocker, Janis Joplin, and more. And I know you've got great stories on all of these.
Santana.
Santana, right? And Santana's drummer as well. What is his name again? I
Oh,
forgot.
yes, drummer.
Yeah,
Oh,
isn't it escaping you too? It'll get back.
you mean that the
We'll fill it in.
yeah.
Anyway, I'll probably put up some clips of those things.
I
But
know it like the back of my hand. I can't believe I can't remember
right, that happens to me
it.
all
Yeah.
the time anymore.
He actually came to live with me
Did he?
after Woodstock. His lawyer said you got to go clean up your act as he was doing too many drugs.
Wow.
And he came to live with me for over a week.
Well, that actually reminds me, you did move some other places besides the hog farm and going out to Woodstock and such. You lived in the castle in L.A., right? Right before Woodstock. Isn't that
I
correct?
was in 66.
56. Right. That was a fascinating period. You had Andy Warhol out there, right? With the Velvet Underground and Nico.
And Bob Dylan.
I don't want to forget that either. In fact, your portrait of Dylan is in the Tulsa Bob Dylan Center, correct?
Yes, have you been there?
I haven't yet, no.
Oh, we'll have to go there together too. I think we should take some trips.
That's so nice of you. I've kind of tethered down to Washington, D.C. these days, though, I've got to admit. All but
Oh, really?
next weekend. I wanted to get this in here too because, Wavy Gravy was a big part of the scene at Woodstock when he was still Hugh Romney. B.B. King had not yet anointed him at the Texas Pop Festival, as I understand it. That's how Wavy got his name. But
He stood over, he walked over him.
right,
He was on
exactly.
stage,
He was tired, right?
and
Laying
no,
on
his back is hurting.
ah, yeah.
And so BB King walked over, stepped over it, and he's stepping over some wavy gravy. And Wavy went, Wavy Gravy. And that was it. His name was Wavy Gravy from then on.
I had to pick up this in 2016. I went up to Philly, and I'm going up again next weekend. And this was for a event they called Unlimited Devotion, and it was Wavy's 80th birthday East Coast edition. So what happened then was that there was a panel after the screening of this film, which I had seen in 2009 on Netflix or whatever, and I thought was really good. But this time there was a panel with the director, Michelle Ezrick, and Wavy and Jahanara and their son, Jordan, who lived in Philly. So one thing,
That's my picture, Wavy.
and I just keep coming back. This is your
That's
picture,
my picture. And the one on the right,
this one,
the one in the clown outfit,
right?
and that one, those are mine too.
On
Yeah.
your one of him in the jester's
Yeah.
costume,
Saint Misbehavin' is the name of that movie.
right?
And that movie really tells a story about Wavy Gravy. And he's a marvelous, marvelous, he's our hero and he's still alive.
Yep,
And so is his wife, Johanna Ra.
right. I saw photographs of them very recently. I try to stay in touch and do things with Camp Winter Rainbow to try to support that. Save a Foundation, which also goes
Yes.
around,
I donate pictures to the Seva Foundation.
right?
So you can buy a beautiful big black and white that I did of Wavy
Oh, great.
this year. They're auctioning it off.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
You were talking about the castle. I think we
Well, yeah,
bypassed.
sort of skip back over that, and that
That
you
was
had
in
Bob Dylan there,
66.
right?
Yeah, I was taking care of it with Tom Law. He and his brother, John Law, had bought it and they were renting it out to friends. And uh, who was the guy who did the Eve of Destruction? Barry McGuire. He was living there. Oh, yeah. So that's a picture I took of Bob. And the ones on the left is Bob and Tom and Robbie Robertson. And uh, Bob came to stay for a week or so, and he got a great room. And I was his cook
Yeah.
and his driver and his masseuse.
And you helped him pick out this shirt, did you not?
Yes.
I love that
Uh,
polka dotted shirt.
where did I say I bought it?
I think you had told me that you had helped him shop for that when you were
Yes,
the
but
driver, right?
does it say right there where we went
Probably
shopping?
does. Let me just take a look.
Anyway, um, he he was very calm with me because there was not a lot of people around. So I would sit in a chair across from him at the dining room table, and I just keep shooting and shooting. And it turns out that that picture, that vertical picture,
Right.
yeah,
That huge one.
that big one is supposedly the the best picture ever taken of him. That's
Wow.
what they're saying. So at the Tulsa, Oklahoma, Bob Dylan Center,
Yes.
that's when they found out I had those pictures, I called them up and I sent them everything. They put that one 15 feet tall and 17 feet wide.
Yeah.
Or was it the other way? Anyway, that one, and then going up the stairs to the second floor are my proof sheets
Oh,
of
wow.
him. And so I'm gonna live forever in the Bob Dylan Center with my pictures. And that's major for me that I was recognized as being one of the best photographers of Bob Dylan. And so,
No
I mean,
doubt.
his movie that's out now. Have you seen his movie?
I've not seen the Timothy Chalamet movie yet. No.
Oh,
I
wait till
haven't.
you see it. Oh
I,
my God, it's fantastic. And
I,
what I like about it is the fact that I remember how he looked, how he stood, how he played his harmonica, how he acted, and there it is right on the screen. And so I feel like I'm personally involved with the movie. In fact, here in New Mexico at the Violet Crown, they uh, had an interview with me talking about the pictures I shot. And then they showed a lot of the pictures I shot. And then I say at the end, and now let's see the movie. And it goes to the movie. And so people would come out and say, Lisa, I just saw you in there and your pictures. And so it was really fun. And now I have a show up at the Violet Crown of the 60s and Bob Dylan. There's a show up in one of the main rooms. Yeah, I like to do big shows as well as the Museum of the 60s.
well, what are your plans for the Museum of the 60s in the future? Do you think that you'll be remounting it?
Well, if anybody who's listening who wants to have that show wherever they are, we'll drive that show and hang it wherever they are. We'll put it up. But for me to be able to show that show, this last time it was 500 pieces. That's a lot of money to rent a space, to hire people to take care of it. So I don't see any future for the Museum of the 60s. And unless somebody calls up and says, we want that museum now. In fact, I had one person in San Francisco said she wanted it, and then she still hasn't come through.
I see.
Yeah, so it's in my shed, except for the part that's at the Violet Crown right now.
The Violet Crown, you're exhibiting some
It's
of
the
it there?
movie theater here.
Okay. And does Pilar still have a gallery there in Santa Fe? Does she?
Yes, and she's got a huge collection of my work there. Huge. She's
Okay.
got Bob Dylan and Otis Redding, Velvet Underground, Janis Joplin, Tiny Tim. Uh, she's got my Native American images. I've shot a lot of Native American images at powwows. And um, Floyd Westerman. You know Floyd Westerman?
Um,
He was one of the greatest Native Americans who supported all the. He's tried to stop the relocation of the Navajos.
I see.
Anyway, I have a lot of pictures of him. He died of one of his implants of his lungs didn't make it, and he died. But a wonderful guy, just wonderful. And I just love all the Native Americans. In fact,
That's right.
Native Americans now are getting a lot more attention than they have in a long time. And I think that's great.
Well, certainly we did a job on that culture, starting with the founding of Jamestown when I was not far from where I grew up. And they're doing a lot of excavations and a lot more at Jamestown Yorktown Foundation. Actually, they're doing a lot
You have
more.
to talk louder.
With the Jamestown Yorktown Foundation, they're doing a lot of work now to really bring forward the roles and the um, contributions Native Americans made and preserving that history. I think that's really an important factor. Um,
Oh, it's very, very important.
overlooked, overlooked a lot, and history focus is going more to also the African American community in Williamsburg. They've just recently reopened or moved and restored the Bray School, which was for education of African Americans during the 18th century. There was a black community in Williamsburg, of course. It was very extensive, mostly enslaved during the Revolutionary period. And of course, after emancipation, we were still, when I was growing up, about half and half African American and or indigenous population as well mixed into that. And then the population of people who were not of that extraction, but whites like myself. And the division between, we forget how recently our society was incredibly divided. And I could go on and on about that, but let's get back to some of your pictures and some of your history, because one of the things that came up too while we were talking about the Bob Dylan connection was this wonderful photograph you've got without Dylan in it, but it's of his typewriter at his desk in the castle, which I think is
Yeah, that's when I was cleaning his room one day. I shot his typewriter. Yeah, that's a rare picture. In fact,
I love.
in that movie that's out now, there's this one scene where they're getting ready to shoot pictures of Timothy, and he says to Albert Grossman, "Don't shoot the typewriter. Don't let him shoot the typewriter." And I said, "Wow." So they put that in there, and I shot the typewriter. I just, oh my God, I felt
So
fantastic that.
I just pulled up my copy of Saint Misbehaving, which has all the autographs, wavies there.
Oh, that's a wavy gravy signature right
Copies.
there. Well,
And
you need to you need to have me come over and sign it because I did those pictures.
Sean Ara did the interior one of herself there.
Oh yeah,
Beautiful picture.
that's such a great shot. Especially, did you know that Johanna Rod dated Bob Dylan?
Yeah, I understand that she was the North Country girl. I was actually
Yeah,
working on that with my vocal coach. I don't know if you saw the little video I sent you about my first interview for Harrowings, which was with my vocal coach. But just yesterday, we worked through Girl from the North Country, which apparently was about her. I've heard. I'm not sure if that's been documented 100%. What do you think? You know,
I don't know.
you know the song from Freewheeling Bob Dylan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, I do.
So anyhow, that was
Let me just say that I think we bypassed Haight Ashbury
oh, let's go back to that.
because we went there and not, we came from there. I came from there
Mhm.
and went back in '66 after the castle and then going to take mushrooms at the Mazatecan Indians in Huautla. We came back and went to the Haight Ashbury because that was when it was really happening. And
And
that
you had an
was
uncle, was it, or somebody?
67. My mother lived there and
Okay.
my stepfather. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we went there, and my stepfather had just broken up with my mother, and he didn't like me because I took acid to smoke dope. And she calls me up. She says, "Your stepfather and I are breaking up, and he's living with a bunch of hippies, so you better call him up." So I called him up, and he says, "Come on up here for dinner." And I had dinner with him in Mill Valley. I flew up for dinner,
Mhm.
and he says, "It wasn't that I didn't love you," when he was mad at me for taking acid. He says, "I didn't know what love was until I took acid." And that line is in the Museum of History Museum here. They put it on the wall. It
Oh,
wasn't that I didn't love you, it's I didn't know what love was, which is true because this museum really showed all the psychedelics that were used, mushrooms, peyote, and ayahuasca. And I said, all those things are important parts of the 60s, and they didn't neglect that at all. So we went up there and we hung out at the Haight Ashbury. We lived in Marin in Forest Knolls. And that's where I met Janis Joplin and photographed her for the poster for uh I even wrote it down here. Anyway, it
mhm.
was for a show at a club on Lombard Street. And that's where I met her. And then I kept shooting her after that in Woodacre, her and the band. And then when she came to New Mexico in 1970, she said, Lisa, I'm tired of these city men. I want me a mountain man. And I said, well, come up to my house in Churches and maybe we can find you one. So she came up and she met this great friend of mine who actually, he looked like a mountain man, but he was an artist and very intelligent and very sweet and very handsome. And he said, let's go have a drink down at the bar. And they went and had a bunch of drinks. They lined up all those little drinks, those little ones. They lined them all up and then drank all of them. And then he said, I think I have a potato baking in my wood stove
Right.
at my house up there, my cabin. And he says, let's go up and check the potato. So they go up and they didn't come back until the next day. And Albert Grossman's at the house and he's going, I got a flight. I've got to cancel the flight. I got to stay with you. And he stayed overnight with us. And I was pregnant with Jesse at that point. And we took some belly pictures, his belly against my belly, Albert.
Mhm.
And she came down and walked up the driveway. And that's when she sat down with Tommy Masters, who later became Bob Dylan's driver for 15 years.
Wow.
And yeah, he's in the picture with her.
I
And
was
she
looking at
sat
that one.
down and she was just laughing and happy. And that picture is one of my best pictures of Janis Joplin.
It is a great picture. I'm scanning through it to see if I can find it, but I can't seem to locate what page it's on here. If it's in, it is in Flashing in the 60s, isn't it? Ah, got
Pardon?
it. Got it.
There it is. Yeah. Let me take a picture of that. I'm going to take a picture of you holding that up.
Okay.
Hold on.
Get
Here
me
we go.
a little bit.
Ta-da.
There's so
Yeah,
much.
the left is a picture of her in Woodacre with the band. Yeah, I did. And Peter's still alive. Is that not Peter? On the right. Yeah.
Oh, right. Let me just
I
look
just saw him. We interviewed him in San Francisco.
at Big
And
Brother.
when he saw me, he goes, Lisa, because we hadn't seen each other for so long. When we run into each other, people nowadays, when they run into each, we always get very excited.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
right.
so we stayed there in the Haight Ashbury, and we were at the Human Being, and that's when Ginsberg got up and danced to the Grateful Dead, and Gary Snyder and Suzuki Roshi, uh, and Ferlinghetti and Timothy Leary. And that's where I shot my best Timothy Leary shot. And Ron Thielen helped put it on. He and his brother and his wife did the psychedelic shop. And but at that, just at the end of our stay there, a lot of people came in with it was hippie. This is what, if you want to see what a hippie looks like, that's what it looked like. It was Haight Ashbury, you know.
Mm,
But then some people started coming in who were doing heroin.
right.
It was one thing to have take acid, but then one other thing to do heroin. So kind of they had a funeral for the hippies and actually buried a bunch of jewelry and beads and stuff like that day.
Ah, here's the Ginsburg picture you were mentioning.
Yes.
And
So that's when that's the best Ginsberg picture. Alan told me, he says, I like that one the best. That's when he was dancing to the Grateful Dead. And Gary Snyder was there too. And he was doing poetry on the stage
mm,
uh,
oh,
with
and Timothy
Allen
Leary.
Ginsberg.
It's a brilliant Timothy
And
Leary.
there's the picture of Timothy Leary. Yeah. He and I remained friends till he died. I actually was photographing him when he was very ill
Right.
in LA. Yeah.
I remember his
So,
last words were, "Why not?"
what?
His last words were, "Why not?"
Why not? He died with a lot of friends around him. It
That's what
was amazing. We
I.
were a pretty tight group then.
Yeah. Do you know? Did you know John Perry Barlow?
Yes.
He wrote this great passages about the last years with Timothy Leary because he got back together with him then and traveled around quite a bit. His memoir, Mother American Night, have you read that one or seen it?
No.
It's very good. He finished it just before he passed away at the age of 70. Too young.
Can't believe all these people have passed away.
Well, yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm trying to do what I can as a historian of son, and a historian myself now by dint of
Michael Shreve. I got it.
Grieve, right?
I had to
The
remember
drummer.
it.
So he
I
came.
had to remember it.
So
The
he came
drummer
and lived
for
with you to clean
Sartana.
up a little bit. Is that?
Pardon?
Did you said he came and lived with you to clean up a little bit?
Say that again.
Michael Shreve came and lived with you for a time. Is
Right.
that correct?
His lawyer said he need to clean up. And he went up to my house and stayed with us, and I fed him all vegetables out of the garden. Because we bought a piece of land up there, 14 acres.
Where is that?
It's 69 in Truchas.
Okay.
It's up in the mountains of the Sangre de Cristo here in Santa Fe, New
Yep.
Mexico.
Yep. And you
And
grew
we had a
vegetables
whole
there.
garden, organic food. We grew everything. And alfalfa for the horses. We had dogs, cats, horses, pigeons, ducks, goats, chickens, and we grew wheat and alfalfa and all our own vegetables. And he came up and I fed him up there. And he felt really good
I'll bet.
after that, after staying there, Michael Shreve. I only shot one picture of him while he was there, but I still have it. And he's still alive.
Yes. In fact, he recently released some new music. So I like to plug people when I can, when I hear new music's coming out. And remember very recently he did some work that I need to pull the details, but it did cross my radar and I was impressed.
Well, Dennis Hopper lived in Taos.
Right?
So he was coming up to that place in churches all the time and visiting us. So I hung out a lot with Dennis Hopper and
Okay.
took a lot of pictures and portraits of him.
This one's a beautiful one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
Now, the funny thing about that picture is nobody ever said, what are you doing with breakfast with Dennis Hopper? Nobody ever asked that question. I think recently somebody did. And I said, well, that was breakfast because Barbara and I slept on either side of him with both a baby on our tits on one side and the other. And he was in the middle sleeping. And he says, don't I get any? And I said,
oh,
you don't get any. But he and I remained really good friends to the very end.
I,
And I have a lot of pictures. If anybody wants to do some stories about Dennis, I've got lots of pictures. He was a really good friend of mine. He was a kind of a nutty guy, but he was interesting and very, very creative. Okay,
yes.
to do all
I,
those.
I have a photograph of his as my banner picture in one of my little groups I call Smoke and Mirrors. It's called Double Standard, which I really love. It has like the Standard Oil thing, and it's a beautiful picture. He was a great photographer, I think. By the way, I have this copy of Skidoo, and I think cinematic history was made. You were talking about nursing the babies. Was this film not where the first nursing of children was filmed?
I think the only time you saw anybody nursing was me nursing Pilar in
And
Skidoo.
Skidoo, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
because Pug
that
Farm had
is
some money, huh?
it's
No,
a crazy movie with the
it is.
read off the name of the people: Carol Channing, Read the name of the people.
Yeah, Jackie Gleason, Carol Channing, Frankie Avalon, Fred Clark, Michael Constantine, Frank Gershwin, John Philip Law, Peter Lawford, Burgess Meredith, one of my favorites. I do a very good Burgess Meredith late life impression my wife hates. George Raft, Caesar
Mickey
Romero,
Rooney.
Mickey Rooney, and Groucho Marx playing God.
Can you believe that
That's
crew
all.
of people?
That's great.
And they hired all. What happened was it's that Jackie Gleason got stuck in a prison. He was visiting one
Right,
of his men, and he couldn't get out. So they had his daughter mail uh, her boyfriend. No, her boyfriend was John Philip Law. They mailed a letter into Jackie Gleason, and he mixed it up in the food, and everybody got high on acid.
right.
And they did a
Including his
hot
wife.
air balloon and flew out Jackie Gleason. And then he was chased by all these hippies to a boat. And all the hippies are the hog farm.
Right.
And so they made enough money. This is in my movie
Yeah.
to then go on the road. And they left the hog farm and traveled to New Mexico to the summer solstice in 1969. Then they bought some land up in Llano, New Mexico,
Mm.
and lived up there together. And then in 69, at the summer solstice celebration in Aspen Meadows, is when Stan Goldstein came and said, "We need you for Woodstock because all of you know what people look like and feel like on acid, and that we need help because if somebody is tripping out, they need to be taken to the trip tent, and you guys are the ones that know how to do that." And so we were flown in an American Airlines jumbo jet
Right.
to New York and then bussed up and then placed on this wonderful piece of land where we set up our teepees and tents and the kitchen and the free stage. And that's where we lived. And afterwards, we cleaned up. There were 35,000 sleeping bags left at
Just a
Woodstock.
yeah.
35,000. And Tom Lott, he taught yoga off the stage. I told you that. And then over by the hog farm. And I'll tell you, that it was the most wonderful event because the bands couldn't get in. They had to be flown in
Right.
and drop down. And here's Janis Joplin walking it, and unbelievable. Who do I? Oh yeah, let's see.
I remember Jerry Garcia saying that he had the sense that there were time travelers from the future just hovering around them, virtually speaking, I guess. And he could sense their presence. And I thought that was really kind of telling that the event was such an historic moment. And you've been a witness
Oh,
to all this history, so it's really wonderful.
and you should go there now. You
I
know what you
would-
do? They have a place for a concert off to the side.
Sure.
Like I went, the Beach Boys. I went and heard the Beach Boys, and I heard uh, the Beatles, uh, and not all of them, but the field itself has been left pristine.
Mhm.
Okay, and and over there's the music, and then they built a whole museum with the whole story in it. And for the last 2 years, they did a special presentation of what I did there. And they flew me in and I gave tours of where we fed everybody and we fed them muesli too.
Wow.
For 2 years, they honored what I had done
That
because they realized at that point that I was the one who bought all the food. They didn't know that before until John Morris was interviewed.
Well, that's a key thing, right? To preserve what people have done and connect those events together is something I'm trying to do with my father's legacy, for instance, too. One of the things he left behind for me, just diverting, just happened to be here at arm's reach, is a little book called What I Read. And he's noted every book he was reading from March 2008 until he passed. The last
Wow.
one was Glenn Greenwald, No Place to Hide, which is kind of an interesting. With Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie, and right before that was Travels with George about George Washington. Travels with Charlie, I got him from Steinbeck because he wanted to read it, and I tried to make sure that he got things he wanted to read, keep the mental part going when his body was giving out. Yeah, so
Mm.
oxygen at the end.
Grace Slick was a wonderful part of the Woodstock movie.
Right. I loved her part in that. And she's still an artist working, as Gorma and Jack are also working still.
And Country Joe. I mean, he had the whole crowd singing.
That was
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah. The
Pardon?
1, 2, 3, 4, what are we fighting for part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He later came up to Taos and we gave him a ride in my hippie bus. I have a hippie bus, a psychedelic bus still to
Silver.
this day. Yeah. And he was going to be on top of the bus for the parade. And he was kind of chatting with the girls up there, and they kind of got bored with his chat. And they said, "Get off of here." So he went down and got inside with me. I was the driver. And he all of a sudden, as we got started, he said, "Stop the bus. I'm getting off." And he got off and he went in front of the bus. And he walked in front of the bus the rest of the parade doing this. Okay. And I don't know if anybody in the audience who was at the parade knew who that was.
I didn't even know who he was.
That's what he did. And I have some lovely pictures of him
And there's
doing
a
that.
lovely bus race, I think, and Silver is one of the buses going with the further and the others in one of your shots in the film, I believe. Isn't that correct?
Oh, yeah, that was at the 4th of July parade up in Abiquiu.
Abiquiu?
You see the blue bus with all these people on top of it, and Tom Law's there, and yeah, that was a great shot of the 4th of July parade. And that's when I shot that picture of our bus uh, covered covered with hippies. No, no, well, that's when I shot Wady Gravy's Roadhog bus covered with hippie, as well as ours. And
Uh,
that
this
one,
on the
that picture was at the 4th of July parade. That picture is my most important picture, even more important than Bob Dylan. That has been used more times
mm,
than any of my other pictures. So that's why I had it put on the cover on the 4th edition of that book. First edition was the um, Grateful Dead, and the second edition, but the third and fourth had the bus on it. By the way, if anybody wants to buy it, it's for sale. Not that one. My bus,
your bus.
my hippie bus. Yeah,
Oh, you're going to sell it.
my hippie bus here.
Hmm.
Oh, I do. I do. I'm
It's
going to show
named
you
Silver, right? Is it a
some
47 Chevy? I seem to remember it was something that.
second Chevy flatbed. So yeah,
Oh, it's blurring out.
is that going to work?
It doesn't like it. Hold it next to your
Here
face. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, that's better.
you see it?
Yep. Raise it up a little bit. I think there's one below it, right?
Oh, here it is.
Top. Ah, there we go.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
I've been in every parade here in New Mexico in that bus with people playing music on the top, and we had the Save the Bees float. This is the Save the Bees float here. Whoop,
if it's next to your, there we go. Yeah, you got it.
Save the Bees float. And we were going to have, this year, we were going to have a parade, and we were going to honor Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was running for president.
Right.
And we had signs that said, "End the chronic disease epidemic, end forever wars, end the censorship, and surveillance, promote health, free speech, peace and honest leadership and national scale. Haters, people before politics, and country before party." And that's what we had on our posters. And we were all ready to go and all ready to sing. And some guy was being chased by the cops downtown, right in the middle of Fiesta. And the cops were shooting at him, and they canceled
Wow.
the parade. And they
Oh,
canceled the whole Fiesta. And all of us were there ready to promote all these wonderful things that Kennedy was going to do, be healing the America. And and we had to turn around and park it back in my backyard. It's right there in my backyard right now.
well, I love your advocacy for organic farming and all of the different ways in which we can become more healthy. And obviously, your health is pretty good, I take it. You're 81 years old now, right?
82 years old, but the
82.
problem is when you get this big, old, when you get this old, your memory starts to go.
Well, little bits, but your memory is pretty good still, I can tell.
Well,
We have to tell the
it's
story.
not what it used to be.
No.
And my voice is starting to go, which is really weird.
Oh, but
But
I seem to remember that we were talking one time and you had overcome some diabetic condition, right? Through some
I
special.
am still diabetic, which is my main problem.
I see. My
Yeah.
father had that as well, and I've got to watch it because I've got the genetics for it. My mother is not diabetic, still walks like 4 or 5 miles a day, is on no medications up until just recently. They put her on some Zoloft, but her memory is gone. And it's really kind of sad to watch because she used to be the registrar at the Department of Collections. You big into museum curation, so you know what that's like. And she used to be able to tell you any accession number of anything in the Colonial Williamsburg collections, which is huge. But now, not so much.
Wow.
And she's in senior living, unfortunately, down in Williamsburg. I wish I could have her here with me, but we don't have space in DC. And I try to get down and visit her whenever I can and keep the memory sharp with little things like family trees. She's like, I can't remember when my mother died, things like that. And
Right. Well, see how I forgot Michael Shree's
right.
name. And I asked my, I asked my computer up there, give me Michael Shree's name or give me
Right.
his name. And it had to go around until it finally came over there. Then there it was.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad it came back. It didn't come back for me without your help. But I guess the organic farming, the trying to stay healthy into our old age, I think is so important. And
We
then
didn't get
preserving our memory.
spirituality.
Sorry?
We didn't get spirituality.
Well, we can pick up that. I've
We didn't talk about the Hare Krishnas.
okay, well, let's talk about them.
Yeah, well, the Hare Krishnas were all over San Francisco at the
Uh-huh.
airports and stuff like that.
Right. Handing out flowers.
Yeah, and what they were trying to uh, talk about what Krishna stood for.
Krishna
That's when they were
consciousness.
out at the airports that they were talking about what he stood for. Okay. And
Mhm.
so my daughter actually married a Hare Krishna and had 3 kids, Peruvian kids.
Oh, that's right. That was Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
Hmm.
So the spirituality was really big in the 60s and all the different groups and all the different gurus,
Right.
such as
Beatles
Ananda.
going off to the Maharishi, right?
Right. It was and yeah, the Beatles. And so it was wonderful. The spirit. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
I
that's fine.
I
That's a good.
here in my notes here
Okay.
because spirituality was very important. And that's when Ram Dass became like a guru. He went to India.
Right.
And when he came back, he was like a guru. And I said, I even said to him, you're a guru. He says, I'm not really a guru. I'm just a voice for the people. And he was very, very good at that. Yeah.
I got plugged into a lot of his world, and part of it too was the relation with Larry Brilliant, Wavy Gravy's best friend, right? They both were out over there with the same guru, with Ram Dass, who gave
Right.
Ram Dass the name Ram Dass, right? And
Right.
of course, now my memory isn't working so well. I can see the face very clearly of the Indian guru they both went and saw. And that fellow inspired Larry Brilliant, who he called Dr. America, to get involved with the UN eradication of smallpox,
Right.
right? So spirituality carries over to that tremendous impact that a spiritual leader could make on, say, Larry, who became part of that UN process of eradicating smallpox. And then that led to SEVA because Steve Jobs got them together out in Minnesota, I think it was, or Michigan. I'm not positive. I have to go back and check my notes too. And say,
They they, uh, they raised money to cure the eyesight of over 1 million Nepalese people. And when my daughter and I went to, oh, wait, two daughters and I went to India, we went by one of their hospitals.
spirituality in action, right?
Yeah, one of the Seva hospitals. And so to this day, they still raise money for Seva. And I just donated that picture of
Of Wavy, was it?
uh, 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 I donate that picture of Wavy Gravy to raise money for Seva. And I do that every year. I donate a big picture or a couple pictures of Wavy Gravy, and they go for a lot of money. Yeah. I
That's
should go this year, May, May 15th. Yes. Isn't that May? May 15th. It's Wavy's birthday. He's going to
oh
be
right, right. 88.
86. 88. I thought it was 86.
I
No,
think
it's 88.
let me just do my math. Hang on. 2016 he was 80. It's now 8 years later to 88. Yeah,
If
it's
he's
great.
still around, he's still around because I call him all the time.
Do you?
Baby,
You
how
get
you doing?
gravy, you get
Uh,
gravy in your ears, huh?
yeah, I think I would go to his birthday this time.
Oh, good, good. If you do, tell him happy birthday from me. I have a picture of him and me together in 2019 at the Ardmore Music Hall in Philadelphia. You know that story, actually, of how he came to go to Philadelphia? The
No.
year on year, 16, 17, 18, and 19, those 4 years, he would go out there for this East Coast edition of his birthday, which was happening his birthday May 15th, as you said, but he would come out like late May, early June. And they had this set of musicians come together. One night was the Wavy All Stars, the next night was the Gravy All Stars. What happened was a guy had a bunch of Grateful Dead posters he wanted to exhibit, and didn't want to sell them. He just wanted to exhibit them. So he was shopping them around for a space he could put them up, like your museum of the '60s. This fellow Scott Shapiro and Scott, or I think Shapiro they say, but I don't know. He finally ended up at the Mainline Art Center in Philadelphia, and he pitched it to their board, and one of the members of the board said, "Does he know?" And Scott was like, "No, what?" Well, this was Wavy Gravy's daughter-in-law, Jordan's wife. Jordan and his family live there in Philadelphia. So that was the beginning of the idea that they could have this exhibit of the beautiful posters that Scott had collected and also have Wavy out there as a guest of honor. They could screen St. Misbehavin', where I got that autographed copy I was showing a minute ago, right? This, and have a panel with Wavy, and then have a bunch of musicians who, in that vein of the Grateful Dead, celebrate the music of the Grateful Dead in a ceremony called Unlimited Devotion. We're doing it again next weekend. So Wavy doesn't come out for it since the pandemic, but I think he's had some health challenges here and there, as we all have. But he's still, as far as I know, hale and hearty over there on the other side in Berkeley at the hog farm. The hog farm's the longest running commune, right? I think out there. Started
Yeah.
back in what
I
60.
went to his last party in San Francisco.
Yeah,
Taj Mahal played at that party.
that's great.
Yeah,
Anybody
I
else?
filmed it.
Oh, you filmed it.
Yeah, I have so many films. Well, I think I should make a film of just putting together all my films without saying anything about it. Just start at one and go all the way through
Jonas
and just do
Mikas.
that movie like that.
Jonas Mikas,
No.
filmmaker. He was one of the Beat crowd in New York City. He did something very similar to that. It was called Along the Way, I Caught Occasional Glimpses of Beauty. About the year 2000, he stitched together all his home movies. Now, he did a lot of editing. He didn't make it continuous, but it was still 4 or 5 hours long. And
Really?
got through the whole thing at the Danish Film Institute when I was living in Copenhagen.
I'd like to do that.
Yeah, stitch them together. It's a good project. There's so many projects we could get into. One of the things I do, inspired possibly partly by you, but also Patti Smith and some other people, um, is I like to go out and I like to just film the passing show. I get my camera out, I go live, and I just walk down the street narrating what I'm seeing.
Oh, I see it all the time. I watch your films.
How do you? That's
Yeah,
just,
you're always walking down the street showing
yeah,
the place you're going to.
commenting on things that I don't know what's going on, but I think of
How old are
myself
you?
as a flaneur. I'm now 62.
See, that's why you look so great, is you're so young. You're
Well,
just a baby and you have a great memory. At the 62, I had a great memory.
yes.
82 is a little different.
Well, you're doing pretty good.
No, 82 is not the same.
No, that's what I've
No,
been.
health starts to deteriorate at 80, but I'm trying to keep up with it. I
Well,
got a lot of supplements I take, a lot of vitamins, and I eat really well, really good organic food. In fact, in my backyard, I have a peach tree,
mhm,
a apricot tree, a cherry tree, and a pear tree that I planted.
fantastic.
And
Well,
I'm growing vegetables in raised beds.
I remember in an interview that you had with KSKQ, the morning show, my friend Holly out there, you were that was one of the main things you put out there for people to garden. If nothing else, garden. And I love that message.
That's what they're saying now, the garden. Yeah, and Kennedy's trying to make everything healthy and get the dyes out of food
That's
and to get
chemicals.
rid of all the sugars that are put in all the food. That's what's caused the diabetes
Oh,
dilemma.
I'm sure. The high fructose corn syrup, it's terrible. And it's not anything. I watched a movie called,
Canola oil, stuff like that, seed oil, vegetable oil, are not good for you.
right,
And they're now promoting all this good stuff for you. So it's time to listen up so
get
we
the
can get
tallow
healthy
French
again.
fries, right?
Oh, yeah. Have you seen them take apart McDonald's French fries and see all the bugs in them?
I didn't want to see that. No.
Oh, yeah. That's really interesting.
I'm
I'm
glad
going,
I
I'm
don't.
never eating fried potatoes from McDonald's. I'm never eating from McDonald's anyway.
No, I'm going to take my wife out tonight to Silver Diner. We don't go out to eat a lot, but eat mostly here, and I try to buy organic things and stress that. But we'll go to Silver Diner, and they do source local foods, organic, and that's one of the things I try to do if I am going out to eat. But trying to eat at home is much more efficient and effective, I find, and economical. And I think we need to all work together to be the change we want to see. One of my main messages has been lately, it's kind of like a little mantra I'm trying to get out there. Every cent spent is a vote for the kind of world we are co creating together. That's how the world is working right now, where it's economic. So we've got to mindfully spend and, you know, put our money where it can do the well. Ken Kesey said it right. Put your good where it can do the most, and that's what we've been trying to do here. There's other things we wanted to touch upon before we wrap up today.
Well, did you talk about my museum in Yalapa, Mexico?
Yes, let's talk about that because you mentioned traveling down there with Tom the first time when all the hippies were going down to eat the mushrooms. And then what
Well,
happened?
I went down in 61, and before I met Tom, I was sailing on a boat, the Fairweather,
The fair weather.
with the family from San Francisco. Took
Okay.
us 3 months to get to Acapulco, and on the way we stopped in Puerto Vallarta and then moved over to Yalapa. And we stayed there for a week, and it was a little village.
Hmm.
And you can only get there by boat, which makes it really interesting. And at that time, Puerto Vallarta didn't have any hotels, nothing. They had one hotel.
Right.
Now it's so packed with hotels you can't even move. Anyway, I went down again to live there in 66 after the castle with Tom, and we were going to build a house and live there forever.
Okay.
And and yeah, and I was photographing everything. I got hepatitis from some bad water,
Oh,
and we were going to stay and heal it and then build the house. And somebody came by and said, I think it was Victor Maymutis, said that's Dylan's road manager. But Dylan, by the way, went there in 76 and nobody recognized him when he got off the canoe. Nobody. They recognized other people, Sacha de la Mane too, they recognized. And he
hmm.
says, nobody recognizes me. I'm going to stay with the Shapiros. And he stayed with the Mickey and Benny Shapiro. And he painted down at the bottom by the path. Every day he would paint people that are coming by. You know, he used to paint his album covers, but he was a terrible
Yes.
painter. Now he's a marvelous painter.
Yeah.
I
I've
don't
seen.
know if have you seen his work?
Yes,
Oh
very
my
much. And his
God.
welding, his
And
gates
his welding, yeah, he's amazing.
is remarkable.
Dylan, if it hadn't been for Bob Dylan, I would not have my career because of my pictures of Bob Dylan. Okay. So, and I've done book covers and albums, things, I've done a lot of stuff for Bob Dylan. Anyway, he was painting, and then one day and he was playing music and nobody knew who he was, and he was having such a blast. That was in 76. And finally, one person said, could you sign your painting of me? And he went, oh no. And he left. Yeah, that was one of his best times ever.
Oh,
And I was so happy for him that he was able to do that. But anyway, we left and we went and took the mushrooms with the Mazatecan Indians. And that's when I did that poster, Mushroom Lady.
all
If you
right.
look it up, Mushroom Lady. And Tom left. He went back to be with his brother in LA with Victor. And I stayed for a month and healed myself of
The hepatitis.
hepatitis.
Hmm.
And John Barrymore Jr. was even there too. And he gave me his little shack because he fried his brains on mushrooms, and he had a little shack he'd fixed up. So I stayed in a little shack, and I'd go into town every day and I'd sell fruit on the plaza. And one of the people I sold fruit with was Maria Sabina, who
Right.
who did the book. They did the book about her,
Hmm.
Alvaro Estrada, called La Sabia de los Hongos, the person who knows the mushrooms. And I did the cover of that 10 years later. I
Hmm.
flew there with Albert Grossman's wife, Sally Grossman, and photographed uh, those pictures for that book. Okay. So then I heard while I was healing that Tom and Victor were in the hospital with hepatitis and they were dying. So I rushed back by bus with my two dogs and all my luggage and found them in LA. And that's when I ended up moving to the Haight Ashbury with Tom. So I didn't build that house in Yalapa. But when I started going back after we divorced in 78, I kept shooting pictures of everything. And I started building houses for people for Mexicans. I would build it, then I would rent it, make back my money, and then I'd go build a hotel room and I'd rent it and I'd make money for the people. I ended up building about 5 different places, and
Hmm.
and you could see my work all over Yalapa. And so one day I did a show on the beach
Uh-huh.
at a restaurant, and everybody liked it. There was 100 pictures. Everybody liked it so much that they said, "Why don't you do something here?" So
Right.
I found that they had built a jail and a sheriff's office
Hmm.
in the middle of town, and I went there, and it was just not in good shape. They never finished it.
I
They
see.
started to finish the sheriff's office. But I walked in, I said, this is the Museum of Yalapa. It's huge. It doesn't have any windows to wreck the photographs. And I had kept the photographs there and I took them in and framed them. Somebody donated 350 to frame them.
Mhm.
Then Diana Rodriguez Anderson said, she finally said, I'll pay for the museum. So she backed the museum. Fernando Garcia Garcia was the builder who brought in his crew. He'd say, get to cement or get this and that. And we'd go buy it together. And I was the architect and the builder. So I stayed in every day. I said, do this, do that, do this, do that. And pretty soon in 2019, we opened up the Museum of Yalapa, the history of the art and culture of Yalapa. And we just uh, did the party for, I think, the 6th anniversary this last March 8th. That's always on my birthday and International Women's Day, that the museum celebrated its 6th year, if you can imagine. And I go down every year and help add on. Fernando and I added on a whole new room for the kids to do the arts and crafts.
Right.
We built the plaza out so that we could have folklorical dancers. Now people do yoga, they show movies, they do art shows. And it's now extremely popular and it's the center of town. And a lot of tourists go and pay $10 for the ticket and they stay in there reading everything and looking at all those pictures for sometimes over an hour. And it's very, very popular with the tourists. But what's a shame is it's not that popular with the locals. I don't know why. I mean, if they have a relative there, they'll go see it. But otherwise, they said that I'm too busy or whatever. But a lot of people go every day. So that's my last museum. I think that's my last museum.
Well, I
Unless
think
I could do the 60s museum again.
I would love that too. I but the one in Mexico, it clearly does a lot for the community, whether they appreciate it or not. I think that that's kind of understandable, though. I go down to museums quite a bit myself because I was born into museum world. But the Phillips collection is right down the street from me, for instance, which is the first museum of modern art in the country. And it's dedicated exclusively to modern art. They've got a really nice Muka exhibit up right now, and the connection to the artistry of like Stanley Mouse and such is there with all that Art Nouveau kind of ethos that his Skeleton and Roses cover for the Grateful Dead had. So they have those albums there, and Yes stuff as well, for that matter. It's kind of an interesting exhibit, both for
I
Alfred's.
have pictures of the artist
Yeah,
that did all those posters,
of Stanley
is of
Mouse
all of
and
them,
Rob.
especially of Stanley Mouse, because
Yeah,
he actually came and lived in New Mexico in Santa Fe for a while.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And just what those that's doing for the kids who get to go to the art museum that you've got going in Mexico. It really transforms lives tremendously to be able to institute these things. And you've done all of these things in the course of just one lifetime. It feels like when I listened to you being interviewed by Jay that you had had many more lifetimes than most people just in one person. What else do we want to cover here? Well, there was one thing I wanted to point out about Bob Dylan going incognito. You know, there's a film called Masked and Anonymous done in 2003 that stars Bob. You familiar with that one?
No,
It's kind of not got a lot of play, right? It's like an art house film. It's got John Goodman in it. It's a promoter. It's in a near future apocalyptic America. Mickey
I
Rourke.
think I saw a clip of it the other day.
They're kind of good, I think. I liked it. I think the wrap up of it wasn't as beautiful as it could be, but Bob was in it. And he, Jeff Bridges dresses up like Bob in a lot of different Bob's period costumes, right? Different ones. And one of them is this wearing a hoodie with shades to be incognito. Apparently, Bob himself, though, went out on, he likes to go to see where musicians grew up. And he was trying to
Yeah, he
find,
walks the streets by himself.
right. And he was trying to find on a rainy day in a neighborhood in New Jersey where Bruce Springsteen had grown up. And he was picked up by the cops. They asked him who he was and what he was doing. He didn't have any ID on him. They didn't recognize him. He said he was Bob Dylan, and they were like, they didn't believe it.
I
They
know,
drove
I
him
thought
back
that.
to they drove him back to the hotel, and it became clear that he was indeed Bob Dylan. But I
I'd
love
like to see Bob Dylan again. If
mm,
he came close enough, I could go to one of his concerts.
right.
You know, it's really great as the Bob Dylan Center. You just got to go there.
I think we ought to go together, like you said. I think that probably is a good place for us to
Yeah, I think we should.
get together again in person.
Yeah,
We never got together in person yet. Um, no, like I said, I'm kind of anchored in Washington D.C. I am going to go to Philly for celebrating Wavy Gravy in absentia um, this coming weekend, and you're going to be seeing him at his party on May 15th.
I'm hoping to drive there. Yeah, my car finally broke down, so I had to get a new car, and it's an electric car, and I'm gonna drive there.
Okay, well,
Yeah, but
I
I think we should go to the museum too.
sure the Tulsa Center.
No,
Oh, which
in
museum?
Bethel.
Oh, the Bethel Park one. That's closer to me. That might be more
Yes,
doable. I need to get up to New York State anyway.
I think we should go to that museum, and we should go to the Bob Dylan Center
Yeah.
in Oklahoma. That's only 8 hours from here.
Well, that's not too
You
bad.
can actually fly into Santa Fe, and then we drive up.
That'd be fun.
Yeah,
A lot of
they
fun.
just came down with a bunch of new footage that they found, and they put it all together. And I went to that event.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, that was at the Violet Crown, and I put on my show in the other room of the '60s and Bob Dylan for that event.
Mm.
Yeah, so
I
I
bet
think we've
that's
talked about almost everything, haven't we? I don't
probably
know.
so. Well, the one thing that actually is still out there for me was watching Trainwreck '99, Woodstock story about that. But that's not such a bright spot on history. But I know that you had a role in playing and recounting the history of what was happening in Woodstock '99 compared to Woodstock '69.
Well, I was in the Woodstock '69 movie, but only for a few seconds. I'm full screen carrying Pilar on my hip and pregnant, and my camera, and my aunt's walking with me. But in Woodstock '94, I'm in two movies.
Okay.
Wady and I are in two movies,
Hmm.
one in Europe and one in the US. And then with Trainwreck '99, I was hired to shoot it for uh, Newsweek, and two crews uh, shot that, or one crew shot that, and they did a big interview with me for that one, where I go and I get one of those golf carts and a bunch
Right.
of plastic bags, and I'm trying to clean up the mess because I said to Pilar at first morning, we were up at the top. It was an old army base.
Right.
And I point down, and this is in the movie. I said, see that trash down there? She goes, yeah. I said, that's the downfall of Woodstock '99. You don't get the trash picked up, there will be a million plastic bottles out there on the ground and nowhere to walk. I said, you got to get that clean. And the guy who did the trash never did it. He never cleaned up. So I'm out there with my golf cart trying to pick up, getting people to pick up, and I can't do it. And they're wrecking everything. And they were trashing everything. Then they ended up burning down the whole fence. But there's one part that's not in the movie.
What's that?
That's when at 3 o'clock in the morning, the police are herding the people back to their sleeping bags. And the kids are screaming at the cops. So I come out and I go, why are you screaming? And he says, he sprayed me with mace and I didn't do any of that burning. I didn't do that. And I said, so what do you want? And he says, I want him to tell me that he's sorry. And so I
Ah.
turned, I said, are you the police, chief of police? And he goes, yeah. And I said, tell him you're sorry. He didn't do anything. And you sprayed him with mace and hit him with that thing you got.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm sorry. And so the kid turned around and they all turned around and went to sleep. It could have been a disaster at that point because there was about 12
Quiet.
cops.
Yeah.
Okay. And and they were ready to hit anybody because they had burnt the place to the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, they burnt 9 semi-tractor trailers full of goods and all these places where you buy t-shirts and stuff.
That's
And
terrible.
and so they were after him. I don't blame them. I mean, it was just terrible. The food was too expensive. There was no place that was out of the shade,
Yeah, it
out
was
of
all
the sun.
concrete.
It cost $150 a ticket.
Well, I think people should watch that as a cautionary tale for what not to do in festivals and things. I've been to some good ones in Locken, down south of Charlottesville, for instance, is when I got back on the bus in 2014, so to speak, which led me to eventually connecting to you. And
And that is major in my life. You
well,
really helped me so much with my museum here.
I'm so grateful for that. I didn't really realize I was doing that much. I just feel like one little cog in the wheel, but I can make these little efforts and just getting that little, moving the needle a little bit in a positive direction, like you did when you told them, just say you're sorry. Just simple things like courtesy and that we can show each other, regardless of what our beliefs are. I think we really need to pull together. And I'm glad we touched upon a lot of the other aspects that are going on now, here and now, and you were campaigning for getting our food cleaned up, for instance, and being more pure. You know, I lived in Denmark for a couple of years, and their quality of food is so good, and people don't worry too much about their health and the care because it's taken care of cradle to grave. And they don't worry too much about how much taxes they're paying, even though they're paying like 50% of what you take in is going to the government because the government uses it appropriately and takes care of the people. So they can use what disposable income they have after the taxes to educate themselves, to improve themselves, to travel the world. And in fact, that's how I ended up in Denmark because a young lady decided to come over and visit with me after we had been corresponding for a year. It didn't work out as it turned out, but it got me to Denmark for a couple of years for a small web software company. So we really can change the world, just one conversation to another. And thank you for being my guest today on Harrowings, Lisa. It means the world to me. I'll try to get it out there on Substack. So once I get this recording completed, over to you. Last words.
Well, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you and to remember all these things. And I hope I live long enough to do this for another 20 years. I hope I can get rid of diabetes. Elon Musk has me on a this glyco shield. I'm supposed to
Oh,
take this and I'm supposed to I drink it like this. Mm.
hmm.
He says it gets rid of diabetes. We'll see.
Well, look it up.
If I could get rid of diabetes, because I'm pretty healthy,
Mhm.
then I think I would last another 20 years. I
Well,
could, if my memory is there.
well, I tell
Anyway,
you,
I
I'm
just
here.
somebody's doing a documentary on me. 2 people are trying to. And I would like to tell all the stories of what I've done before, like helping get the armies out of El Salvador, stopping the relocation of the Navajo Indians. I worked really hard doing that, and all the different things that I've worked on. I would like to share all my pictures with somebody who can then produce a video of my life so that to show that everybody could do something wonderful to create love, uh, peace, and justice. in the world. We need that. No more wars, just love, peace, and justice. And everybody getting along with each other and taking care of each other and eating well and exercising well. I would like to do uh, have them do a documentary on me promoting that and to let people know that women can do this kind of work as well as men. So I think, I hope that the end of my life we can do that. My daughter has a gallery of my work in Santa Fe,
Yes.
and
One.
in various places in California have my work too. But I would like to really do the entire story before I go away. The Last Supper.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time. And we'll end here.
Send me a copy of this.
I definitely will. I'm going to post it. One way or the other, I'll manage to get this
Let
report.
me know because the ladies I meet with every Tuesday want to see
Okay.
what it was.
And maybe we can coach each other through using Substack Live next time and do it again soon. Um,
Okay.
Take care now. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.